Hey friends, welcome back. Gabriel Kevin here. How are you today? Hope you're having a great, beautiful day. And this is another installment in my suite of music tutorials covering everything from recording equipment, mixing, interfaces, producing, mastering, and all that great stuff. So check out my other tutorials, even on tempo and things like that. But anyway, so today I want to show what I use for vocal pitch correction, or sometimes known as auto-tune. But auto-tune, I believe, is a product. I do not use auto-tune. There's nothing wrong with any of the ones that are out there, but I kind of fell in love with Melodyne, Melodyne by CELEMONY, CELEMONY. And I had used Antares before on a rack mount unit in the days when you didn't have DAWs, DAW, digital audio workstation like Studio One, what I use. And there's Pro Tools and stuff like that. And they're all great. But I use Studio One. And back in the day when you didn't have this, you had outbound equipment. So all the faders were there and everything was recorded on that equipment. And my first auto-tune processor was a rack mount unit, and I had to take the cable out from the machine into the unit, and I adjusted on the unit with the knobs and listened to it back, etc. So today we've moved a lot further into better stuff. So I want to show Melodyne today. I'm going to use my song Wonderland. I'm using a tutorial version, so I'm not destroying my real version. Which of the 5 songs that I have out there right now in Pandora and Spotify and on my channel here, you can hear the final mastered version. And I always present that after you see stuff here in any of my tutorials and the detail and the moving around stuff, and I take effects off and on just to show things, go listen to the master versions, because that's the final product. And if you look at my producing tutorial, you go from a blank canvas to a final beautiful painting. Always listen to the final product so you can see, oh, that's how it applied through that whole thing, and that's what he did to get to that point. So the end product is the most important thing to me. But let's talk about this stuff. So Melodyne comes with Studio One Professional. So that's how I found it. It actually came with the software when I way back when got Studio One, and it's over here. It says CELEMONY, and if I let me close this isotope guy, and if I drop down CELEMONY, it says Melodyne. Okay, so that came with it, just like some of these other Personas plugins, but it's not. It doesn't operate the same way as most plugins in Studio One. So if I want to put a flanger on a vocal, I would find it here, say an isotope, and drag it over to the track, or actually down here to the console to the track, and it would show up like this nectar here on these vocals. And that nectar is one of my plugins I use for vocals. Check out my plugins tutorial, and that'll explain nectar. But it doesn't work that way, which is kind of cool. So what it does is it works by events. So each one of these things here on a track is an event. This is the chorus to Wonderland, and I have some effects off, so it's going to, it's not sound exactly like the mastered version, but let's just play it so you get a reference of what we're doing here. And this is with the full song. Do you know that time is on our hands? Okay, so that's, I just want to use this event here. It's a double, so if I solo this one and I solo the double, these are doubles, sung separately. Do you know that time is on our hands? And that's how you get that fat sound. So if we just go with the first one. Do you know that time is on our hands? And if I take off nectar, you're going to hear it raw. Do you know that time is on our hands? I would always recommend to do pitch correction and stuff like that to vocals with no effects on, obviously. So we're going to do it that way. And the other thing I want to point out way up front here is that you can use pitch correction on non-vocals. And if you don't know if you knew that or not, but I've done that sometimes when I have a guitar solo and I'm bending the string, and trying to be the great rock guitarist. And I don't necessarily get to that perfect bend, but the rest of the whole solo was great. I'm not going to replay the whole solo. I'm not going to punch that in because it'd be way too hard to punch in. I just applied some pitch correction, and the great thing about Melodyne is you can, and I think this is true of most auto tunes and pitch corrections, is you can say how much you want that to be pitch corrected. So you can go like from here right to there, or you can have it, you can keep the slide of the vocal and let it gently get into it. So there's all those parameters that you can do. So, but the cool thing about this is, like I said, is that it doesn't operate by a drag and drop. You highlight the event and you come up here to audio, and you have to highlight the event or it won't show, and you say edit with Melodyne, which is cool. The other way you can do it, if you highlight the track, I believe in no, you can't do it there. Sorry, you have to do it here. Oh, I'm sorry, not highlight the track. Duh. You drop down the for. I always admit my mistakes. Sometimes I've done these songs a while back, so he's making excuses all over the place here. If you highlight the event and you drop and you right click and drop down, that's where you can also hit edit Melodyne. So I'll leave that part in. Now I'm going to cut that part out. I'm going to be honest about my mistakes. So here we are, Melodyne. So I'll do it up here. So I've already edited this with Melodyne, and real quick, the way you know that is visually. See this little green line that goes through here, and it's here, and it looks like a heartbeat. It changes. That green line, if you see that on any event, you know that Melodyne is applied to it. Now down here, if you look at this blue thing here, I think this is a little guitar thing, there's no line through it, so there's no Melodyne on that. But anyway, so that's how you can tell right away. So let's edit it. So I'm going to hit edit with Melodyne, and what's going to happen is this whole console at the bottom is going to disappear, and Melodyne is going to show. And there it is. All right, so now what we have is a very weird looking screen. Okay, so if I put the cursor somewhere, anywhere, you'll notice that the cursor is moving down here. Okay, so over here, there's a little scroll bar. It's a weird looking scroll bar, but I can scroll over, and now I have this whole section of the chorus. So again, if I put the cursor here, you see the cursor move down here. So if you look down here and I move the cursor, it's following the host. Okay, so if I play this here, it'll play through this, and we're going to enlarge that so you can see it better. And just watch the cursor. It follows the host is my point, and it's soloed. So here we go.
Do you know that time is on our hands?
Okay, so it follows down here. So what I tend to do is I will just look down here now because I can see where the cursor is, but I'll move the cursor up here. Okay, so what can you do here? What are these things? Why do they look so weird? They're called blobs. So if you take this part of the toolbar here that has the arrow, and you hold it down, and you go to the magnifying glass and the zoom tool, and you let go, you have a magnifying glass. Now if I click down on this is some navigation stuff. If I click down, left click, and I go sideways, and I'm holding it down, it goes like that. If I go vertical, it gets wider. Okay, cool. Let's do it from there. Now we can see these blobs. There we go. That's even better. Okay, so what it did initially was it created these blobs, and nothing was applied to it, so it was kind of not on. So what do you do with these things? Well, these are the representation of your actual vocal. So if you watch this, see this beginning part here? I want to get back to the main tool. This beginning part here is my breath. If you notice something, see the breath up here and the breath there? It actually captures the breath. It captures everything of what's being performed in this event. Now, these are the other events down the line, but we're just going to stick to this to keep it simple. So each one of these is like a phrase. So it cuts it up based on what it thinks you're doing. So here on the left is the scale. So most of this phrases in this event are in B, the note B. These two are in the note C sharp. So how does it know this? Because only certain of these are, you can see them, the other ones are kind of grayed out, because it made an analysis and said you are in the key of E major, and here it is down here, it says E major. So to the analysis of all this and said you're in the key of E major. This song is in the key of E major, so it made the correct determination. And if you sing, originally your vocal you sing, and you sing on key to a song that's in E major, and you sing on key to it, with the notes of E major, it's going to determine it's E major. So that's pretty straightforward, and that's a cool thing that it does. Okay, now, how do you pitch correct? So when this first came in, these, I think Karen Carpenter from the Carpenters was one of the greatest singers that always sound perfectly on key and on tune. I think Burt Bacharach said that about her. If you know the Carpenters back in the 70s. So not everybody sings perfectly on key because we're human beings. So some of these were slightly off. I'm going to give myself that credit. Some of them are just slightly off. And how did I then get them to be on key? Well, it's cool. First thing you do, and these are already done, but I'm going to show you anyway. First thing you do is you highlight, and you just drag and drop highlight what you want to correct. Done. Then there's a little tool here, and I'm going to go through the major stuff of this pitch correction. It's called Correct Pitch Macro. And that's the first step that I do. So I highlight what I want to do. Well, first I edit with Melodyne and it creates these blobs, and they're all, they're out of whack a little bit. And then you go over here and you click on this Correct Pitch Macro. Now, there's two bars. One says Pitch Center and Pitch Drift. So the pitch center is the center of the actual pitch, and the drift are these lines that are going up and down where I may be sliding a little bit. So I'm drifting from the pitch, which is fine because we're human. We're not going to all sing robotic, perfectly. You could do that, and you could make these things sound robotic. But the pitch drift is actually the humanizing of it. That is human. So what I'll do is I'm going to pull these back to 0. And that's the original way it looked. So you see, these are not exactly on the C sharp. This one's pretty close. This one's a little off. And I'm around the B. This one here is good. This one here is good. So there's fluctuation in my singing of this. And I'm honest, so that's the way I sang it. So then what I did is it captures the fact that it's E major. And you say, and I always click this, snap to E major. So I want it to snap to these notes that are E major, and every note here on the side is an E major. And I can snap to grid. I'm not snap to grid, snap to E major. I'm on my snap to grid mode. And then I pull this pitch center, which is going to center it to those notes that it is probably closest to and believes, analyzes where it should go. So I'm going to pull it. And as I pull it, you'll notice the notes are moving. Now you can go to 100%. And that'll be like, look, it's perfectly on. Right across. This is all directly, perfectly on the B, and that's all on the C sharp. Well, that's not the way humans sing. So what I always do is I back it off a little bit, and I always go to about 84 to keep some of that humanization in there. So it's just a little, as you can see, they're a little, but that makes it human. And then I'll bring the pitch drift, because I want to also correct that to be closer to the center, and I'll do that to 84. That's just me. I use 84. I didn't get these totally to 84, but that's that. So then you say, okay, now you are in pretty good shape. You have pitch corrected. That's all it took. It knows the key. You bring up this dialogue and you pull them to where you want them, and you just listen. So if we listen to it, and I can just hit play, start here with the breath.
Do you know that time is on our hands? Hands.
So hands. So see these lines? That's the drift. That's where I'm going. Hands, hands. Right. Now we can almost remove all that. Not here. There's more editing that you can do, and you can get like really perfect. So let's take that back down and let's hear how it originally sounded. And if it hurts your ears, I apologize.
Do you know that time is on our hands? Hands.
So this a little bit off doesn't sound, I mean, to my ear, it sounds pretty close.
Do you know that time is on our hands? Hands.
But this one here is a little flat. So doing this pitch correction helped me out and put it where it should be because it was close enough. Now, if you're way, way off and you do this, and you can move these blobs, and I'll show you how to do that. If you're way, way off and you do this, I don't hit OK. It'll start changing the tonal quality and the timbre of your vocal. But most of the time it's not really that noticeable. So you always want to try to sing as close to pitch as possible. That I think that's a normal thing that people do know. So now I did this, and now it's pretty good. So let's hear it again.
Do you know that time is on our hands? Hands.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Now I want to make it a little tighter. Okay, now I already did it, but I'm going to show you what I did. So if I want to make it tighter and remove some of the drift. So now this guy is really on those lines. They are. Now, had I put it at 100% to be all of them be perfect on the line, but I don't think you or I can, or somebody can tell that this is not perfectly on.
Do you know that time is on our hands?
Okay, so what you do is you highlight again, you come here, and this is what I do, and you drop this down, and I pick the middle one, which says pitch modulation tool. Now the first one is pitch tool, which will help further adjust the pitch modulation tool, and then pitch drift tool. But I'm going to pick the pitch modulation tool for our purposes here. Now I've already highlighted this. All I got to do is grab anywhere, and you can just highlight individual blobs, but I'm doing this whole phrase, and I just put that tool anywhere on this because they're all highlighted, so it's going to apply to all of that that's highlighted, and I hold it down. Okay, hear that? When I hold it down, it's doing the note. If I pull it up while I'm doing that, you're going to watch these drifts, the modulation, and part of the drift. So in here it has a little modulation. It looks like a heartbeat. So let me get out of the. See this? That's a modulation, right? That's because my voice is modulating. Because it's not like holding a piano note. So let me highlight this again. So that's the modulation. I'm actually adjusting modulation along with drift, but you can actually do drift too by excuse me, using the drift tool. Okay, so modulation. Here we go. And this is how I tighten up. So I'll hold it down, and I'm going to pull it upward. That gets worse. I'm going to pull it downward, and you notice the drift is going away? Now, those modulations have become more straight line. So when you play it, it's going to sound...
Do you know that time is on our hands? Hands.
Gets a little robotic, right? So, but if it's in the music, and I'm going to put this in, but I'm going to mute the other one. I'm going to mute the double. And you listen to it in the music, you tend not to hear that robotic. Okay, so you have to judge yourself how much of that modulation you want to remove or increase. So I'm going to pull it back to where it was. I kept it about here. And you play with it, and you use your ear. Just play with it, and you use your ear.
Do you know that time is on our hands? Hands.
See, I like that because it has some modulation in it, and it has that human feel to it versus robotic. So, again, if you made it really like this, I mean, it's almost a straight line.
Do you know that time is on our hands? Hands.
And you can hear the drift. It's kind of like it's bouncing up to it. So that's not cool. But by the way, you have undo. So you go over here to edit, and you hit undo, and it'll put it back where it was. So that's how you initially set your pitch. That's how you can change the modulation, and you can use the other tools to change, to add more to the pitch, etc. So it's all just try it out and do it. So what else can we do? Well, if I wanted to, I could take this blob here, and I could, by the way, you can just highlight any one. If you only want to adjust one, just highlight the one you want to adjust. I tend to do that a lot of times if I have a long phrase at the end of a chorus, and it's like a note that's held for a long time, I will take that modulation, I'll make that real tight. Because it's just one note being held, and I want it to be perfect, especially if that note's being held, and there's a harmony with it, and another harmony with it, and it's at the end. It's not like phrasing, singing like, the words. It's just like it's holding a long note, and especially if there's harmonies, I'll really tighten up that modulation on all three of them, or how many there are, in order to get that really strong, and there's no wavering at all. So there are times when I'll heavy adjust modulation, and times when I'll mildly adjust modulation. All by ear. Don't do it by visual. So what could I do with this guy? Well, I can move him. So I can actually take him and make him a B. He's not a C sharp anymore. Now let's listen. It's right on the B.
Do you know that time is on our hands? Hands. Do you know that time is on our hands? Hands.
Okay, and the more you move it, the more it's going to have a little bit of extra wavering. So you can actually take that and then you can use the modulation tool on it again and tighten that up to the B or to the pitch to the B and make it sound that wouldn't have that little bit of fine wobble in it. But I'm going to put it back. Oops. Now you can actually move it off key. So this is not in key. This is that's a D, which is not in the key of E major.
Do you know that time is on our hands?
So that's not in key, but I could move it to a D sharp, which is in key.
Do you know that time is on our hands? Hands. Do you know that time is on our hands?
Okay, that sounded kind of cool. Now, remember this other one below it in the track list is a double. So here's some cool things. So now I'm going to solo both of them. The second one below still has this, has the exact same correction, still has this on C sharp now, and this one's on D sharp. So there's going to be a harmony here when it hits that point.
Do you know that time is on our hands? Do you know that time is on our hands?
It sounds pretty good to me. And I just created a harmony that wasn't there before. What I could do is I could actually make it a lower harmony. So I drag it down and I'll put it on A. So if I look on a keyboard, A, C sharp, the other one was a C sharp, and an A, that's a third. From the C sharp to the D sharp was not even a third. But anyway, so now we're going to hear a third, a low third.
Do you know that time is on our hands? Do you know that time is on our hands?
Sounds cool. So you can play around with it. And it's cool stuff. Okay. So, and what would be a fifth? A C sharp. I'm looking here. A C sharp would be a G sharp. Is there a G sharp? Yeah, the one below that one. This is, and it always makes that noise because it's indicating where you're putting it.
Do you know that time is on our hands?
That's a fifth.
Do you know that time is on our hands?
So you can do all kinds of stuff with this that's really cool by moving stuff around. What else can you do? Oh, tell me. By the way, there's settings over here that you can, preferences and stuff that you can read up the manual, what kind of algorithm you're using, etc. But I'm just giving the basics here. But there's so much more this can do. And again, you could do this with guitar solos and stuff like that. And now I'm thinking of it. I want to throw this out there. This is you can do polyphonic or monophonic. Okay, this is monophonic. It's one note per phrase or per as it's moving along the timeline. It does do polyphonic. So I had a guitar solo that had like multiple things happening in it, and it literally broke it apart. It was one event, but the event was polyphonic, which means it had multiple things. So say you're playing a keyboard and you have like you're playing, two notes or a triad. You're playing a chord, a triad chord, 3 notes. It'll break that apart, and then you can pitch, adjust, and do all this stuff to each one of those. Very cool, polyphonic. Okay, so what else can you do? We can split. What? So see, this here is split, right? From here to here to here, split, because I sang it that way. But what if I wanted to say, take this guy here, and I want this first part of it, and let's see, what is that phrase?
Do you know that time is on our hands? Do you know that time is on our hands?
Okay, let's take the word time here, okay? And here, okay, I think that's already split. Let's see. Yeah, okay, that's already split. But let's say I wanted to split this one. This is not split, so the whole thing's moving, see? And whatever reason I want to split it. So you go over here to the note separation tool. And there it is. Well, I have to grab it first, right? That's separation type. This is separation tool. Okay, so if I come here and you see it, I could put this somewhere right in the middle there and double click, and I just split it. Come back to my pointer tool, and now I can pull this one up if I wanted to. Or I wanted to adjust this one, say it was where it was, and I wanted to adjust that one, but leave this alone. So you can cut these things all up that you want. And if you look here, all this is just a hell of a drift down here. But, we can listen to that, but it's just the way it's sang. So don't let the visual think like, well, that's really bad. No, it's not. It's just analyzing what you're doing, and you can adjust that. So then I could, going back to this, I could put that there, still in key, and play it. I'll take it out of the double.
Do you know that time is on our hands? Do you know that time is on our hands?
That actually sounds pretty cool. I probably should have sang it that way in the first place. So it's not just pitch correction. It's, you can adjust drift, modulation. You can cut things. You can move things in the key, all visual, and then just test it out. And then if you have a double and you switch things around in the two doubles, you can just create harmonies. Very cool stuff. So there is another thing that sometimes when you do this cut, and this didn't happen here, but let me see if I can cut something and make happen what I want to happen. Let's see if I cut here. Ah, there we go. No, see what happened? When I cut that, they're not exactly on the B after I cut it. Now if I undo that, they're back on the B, because the whole thing is on the B, but once I cut it right there, because of the, and this is what I believe, because of the modulation, it's saying, okay, I have to analyze these two things separately now, and this one's a little bit off, and this one's a little bit off too. There's a little flat, there's a little sharp, because the modulation now has been separated. How do you fix that? Well, you just highlight both of them. Well, you can drag and highlight, right? Okay, let's see, that. I want that, and I want this one. I use the shift key. Well, it's highlighting the whole thing. Okay. Now you go back here to your correct pitch macro and you click on that. And if you notice, there is that pitch center is off on both of them. So I'm adjusting two at the same time. Now I could do one at the same time, but I'm going to adjust two at the same time. So it's saying that 0% to 83%, somewhere in there, this is off. But since there's two of them, it's guessing. Which, you know, it's saying you have two off. Now if I canceled that, and I just picked one, and I did the same thing, that range is gone because it's not two of them. Just wanted to point that out. So now I can, let's just go back and highlight both of them. So sometimes when you do a split, you got to be careful, and you have to watch it. Did it go off a little bit? Very easy to correct. You just look here. Oh, it's off. Highlight both of them. Do this, and drag this top guy back to the 84 or wherever you want it. There. Now they're both back. And I just canceled. Aha! He's an idiot. Sorry about that, folks. How about clicking OK would be better. Now, it should be fine. So if I put the cursor here.
Hands.
But now, since I split it, I probably had a reason to split it. I want this one to be, well, they're both highlighted. Or I can take both of them. But if you highlight them, it moves all of them.
Hands. Hands.
So we'll put that back up there. And I just move. If you notice that, even when I missed the B, it put it back on the B. So I'll put it here with this guy.
Hands. Hands.
Okay, so you get the point. You can cut things, and that cuts it nicely, but at the same time, for whatever purpose you want to do, and sometimes it goes off a little bit because the modulation is being analyzed separately now, and so it goes, oh, you're a little off now, and you just use that pitch correction tool dialog box to put it back. So that's pretty much everything about Melodyne I want to show today. Again, play with it. You know, you hit edit with Melodyne. If you get the pro version of Studio One, you will get Melodyne, and there's good manuals on it. You know, I've encouraged on these types of, you know, plugins that do a lot of good stuff for you to definitely read up on all the other things that it can do. But I wanted to give an idea of what's happening here. And up here in the dialog box, it's saying it's on B3, and the 3 would be where it's sitting on the keyboard, like from middle C to where it is. So that would be in relation to middle C. And it's off by a 5 count is what it's saying. This one blob is saying it's off by 5 count. So if I click this one, it's saying it's a C sharp in the 4th position on the keyboard from the 4th scale, you know, the octave, I'm sorry, it's an octave from the keyboard, and it's off by a 7 count. So you can kind of see numerically where you're at, but always do it audio. Always do it with by listening, and that will be your best bet. So that's a good run on Melodyne by CELEMONY. Again, you get it with Studio One Pro, and that's how it works. And then when you're done with it, and you made the beautiful things that you wanted to make, and just click the X, and it applies it. And then had you not done it, like down here, see this vocal here? I did not apply Melodyne to it because I didn't want to. I liked it the way it was. So where did my console go? Well, if you know my navigation tutorial, you hit View and you hit Console, and the console comes back. So I hope this was helpful today. Again, look at my other tutorials if you have interest in some of the other things that I go through. And I always do concepts and then application as best as possible based on what the topic is. So like for producing tutorial, I'll go through what producing is, and it doesn't matter what the DAW is, you know, you can have Pro Tools, whatever. And then I use the application of Studio One to show how it applies. So, you know, even if you're not using Studio One on some of these things, you might want to look at them just for some ideas and things that I have done, and then listen to my mastered songs to see the end product. So hopefully this was helpful for you. And there are other things on my channel other than music. I'm a published novelist and poet, so they're out on Amazon, and I go through how I wrote a novel and how I wrote poetry and how I did songwriting and, you know, stuff like that. So passing ideas back and forth between us. Please put things in the comments. What do you use for auto-tune? How do you like that? And what do you think has the difference between that and Melodyne, say? And let's help each other out. I'm not, you know, there's music is subjective. The tools you use are subjective. It's whatever you like and feel comfortable with and can afford to at the same time. So if you like this stuff and you want to see more stuff and you want to see more episodes from my kind of reality life show called Radical Cathedral, which is just a show and just me doing some talking and stuff about topics, episodes always coming out with that, please subscribe and you'll be in the know for all the new stuff, music and everything else. And if you like this, please like it. And please, the most important thing to me, I always say, is please share it. If you know somebody who's like, I need an auto-tune thing, help me. Say, hey, go listen to Gabriel Kevin. He has a thing on Melodyne, and go listen to this guy, and he has a thing on Antares, and et cetera, and we help each other out. So please subscribe, please like, and please definitely share. Other than that, have an awesome, beautiful day. Take care. Thanks. Bye.